Hello everyone, in today's video we will be talking about charts. We're going to begin by explaining what charts are. Charts are basically a tool that we use in order to visualize information, in order for us to see it. So we might just have some numbers paired with some data overall, and right now it might not be that helpful. But if we were to put it on a chart, we might be able to make a lot more sense out of it. This can be especially handy when we're talking about very big numbers, very complex numbers, or even if we have some numbers that might be a little confusing, like let's say decimal numbers or maybe fractions. Putting them on charts helps us a lot in order to make sense of the data that we have. So we're going to begin by making bar charts, and then we're going to make some pie charts, and we're going to explain the differences for both. For our first bar chart, um, we will be using a very simple example. We will be creating a chart of the students per class in a school. So in this school, grade 1 has 60 students, grade 2 has 50 students, grade 3 55, grade 4 45, grade 5 40, and grade 6 45. So we want to visualize that in order to see if we can get some information out of it. So what we've done here is basically we've made two lines, 1 and 2, and these are going to be called axis. This is one axis and this is another axis. And on each axis we're going to put a set of values. On this axis here we are going to put the value grade. So what grade? And on this axis, we're going to put the numbers. So the numbers are going here. So here we're going to start by putting in the grades. So in this first dot, I'm going to put in grade 1. And I'm going to make that a little smaller so that they can all fit. There we go. And then next to it, I'm going to put grade 2. And then we're going to have grade 3, grade 4, grade 5, and grade 6. Okay, so now I have the values down on the bottom axis. Now on this axis, I am not going to put these numbers. I am instead going to put just numbers from 0 all the way up, going up by 10 for each line. And you're going to see why I do that. So here at the bottom right here is going to be 0. Then on the next line, and I've made these lines just to help me out a little bit. These lines, the gray lines, aren't really necessary. They just help out a bit. So here on the first line, I'm going to put in 10. And on the second line, it's going to be 20. Then 30. And then 40, and so on. 50. 60. 70. 80. 90. 100. 110. And I stopped at 110. That's kind of random. It wasn't anything specific. Our numbers only go up to 60. Doesn't matter. Oh, I made a mistake in my counting somewhere. Where was that? I actually go up to 120. So now I am going to create a bar, a rectangle, that starts here on this line and it reaches the height of the value that I want in order to represent this grade. So grade 1 has 60 students, so I'm going to make a bar that rises from here and reaches all the way to 60 to show that grade 1 has 60 students. Next up is grade 2. Grade 2 has 50 students, so I'm going to make a bar that starts from here and reaches the number 50. Here. Next up, grade 3 has 55 students, so I'm going to start a bar that starts from here and it's going to reach about halfway between 50 and 60, because here, since 50 is here, then 51, 52, 53, 54, it's going to be 55 is going to be somewhere in between here, about halfway through. And I actually made it a little lower than I should have, so let's try again. Let's try that again. And now it's 2. Doesn't matter if one is too thick or one is too slim here. That doesn't really matter. What I do care about is how high they reach, because that shows me the value for each one. Next up, grade 4 has 45 students, so I need to make a bar that goes about halfway between 40 and 50. So somewhere here. Next up, grade 5 has 40 students, so I'm going to make a bar that reaches up to 40. And lastly, grade 6 has 45 students. So again, about halfway between 40 and 50. There. Now, this can help me to, basically seeing it like this, can help me to understand better how the students are distributed throughout the school. So this information doesn't give me any specific, this chart doesn't give me any specific information, but in a different chart, I might be able to see something different, something that I didn't see just by looking at the numbers and the data. So I'm going to delete this now. And we're going to do our next chart. Now, for our next chart, we're not going to have grades, so we can delete these values. And yeah, these two. So let's see. Here we can see the money that someone saved per month. So in January they saved 300, in February they saved 200, March 250, and so on. So we can see the amount of money that they saved over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 months. So now I'm not going to need 6 points down here. I'm actually going to need 8, because I have 8 values here. So I'm going to erase this and make a new one. Also, I'm not going to be needing these numbers because I'm going to need to make new ones, because you can see here that this goes way above 120. This reaches all the way to 300. That's the biggest, it's the greatest value in this number set. So I'm going to be putting in different numbers in order to have these values on this axis. So I'm going to erase the numbers, and I'm going to put in new values here. Before I do that, I'm going to make 8 dots where I'm going to be placing the months on the bottom axis. So let's just say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, they're a little close together, but that doesn't really matter. And then I'm going to put in the months. So first we're going to have January. And I'm going to tilt it a little bit so that we can have enough room for all of them. After January, we have February. Then we have March. Then we have April. Then we have May and June, July, and August. Now the values. I'm going to need to get all the way up to 300, so I would like for 300 to be somewhere at the top here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put, well, here we're going to start off at 0, of course. We always, or almost always, we start at 0 here. And here I'm going to put in 50. Now that's going to put 300 somewhere around here in this area, but it doesn't really matter. Again, so I'm going to put 50 here, which means that 100 is going to be here. And you can imagine that in between these two, so if I would zoom in really, really close, like really, really close, what I would be able to see here is all of the numbers between, let's say, if 0 is down here, where the lines meet, so at this point right here, and we'd have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and so on until 50 right here, and 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, and so on until 100, and then 101, 102, 103, 104, and so on until 150 right here, and so on. Each line represents a jump in 50. Why 50? Because I decided that. You could have put in 20 here, and it would have gone 20, 40, 60, 80. It doesn't really matter. You can put whatever you want. It's just that I chose 50 because that's going to work best for this problem, based on the numbers that we have, based on these numbers. I don't need to be so specific so as to put in 10, 20, 30, 40 like we did in the previous problem. I can be more generic, like here, 50, 100, 150. If you look at these numbers, you're going to see that they're going to fall exactly on some line. So here I'd have to put in 200, and then another 50 would give me 250, and then another 100, another 50 would give me 300. Now I could go on. I could put in 350 here, and another 50 would get me to 400, and so on. But it doesn't really matter. Since I don't have any values above 300, this wasn't even necessary, really. So now let's create this graph. Here we see how much money was saved every month. So in the first month, this person saved 300 euros. So we're going to make a bar. It starts from this line and goes all the way up to 300. Then in February, they saved 200. So we're going to make a bar that goes up to 200. Next, in March, they saved 250. So we're going to make a bar that goes up to the line of 250. In April, it was just 50. So we're going to make a really small bar that only reaches 50. Then in May, 100. In June, it was 200. In July, it was again 200. And in August, it was 250. Okay, so what good is this? Well, seeing this chart, we can basically tell that, oh, you saved about 200 to 300 euros per month, except for here where you had some sort of big expenses that cost you a lot of money and didn't allow you to save what you wanted to. Now also, we could have done the reverse. So I could have given you this chart and asked you how much money was saved per month. So if I hadn't given you any of this, I asked you how much money was saved per month, you'd have to see, oh, in January the bar reached 300, so in January it was 300. In February it was 200, so that was 200. And then after you found all of them, I could say, well, how much money was saved overall? And you'd have to add these numbers here. So that's basically how we use charts. In the next example, we are going to graph world population by year, but we're not going to look at the years one by one. We're going to look at them per 100 years so that we can see the difference. Okay, so we have 6 values. So the population in 1500, 1600, 1700, 1800, 1900, and 2000. So we've made 6 dots here. So I'm going to write 1500, 1600, 1700, 1800, 1900, and 2000. 2000. Okay, great. Then we're going to have to decide what numbers we're going to put here on this axis. So our biggest value here is 6 billion. So we're going to want 6 billion to be somewhere at the top. So what we could do is put, if we put about 500,000, then we would have 500,000, 1 billion, then 2 above that, 2 billion, 3 billion, 4 billion, 5 billion, 6 billion right at the top. So let's do that. We're going to put 500,000 here. So that's, sorry, did I say 500,000? I meant 500 million. So 1 billion up here. A billion and a half up here. 2 billion up here. So now you know what we're going to do? Make this a little easier. So we're going to have 3 billion here, 4 billion here, 5 billion here, and then 6 billion here. And in between, we're going to have the halves. So here we're going to have 2.5 billion. We're going to have 3.5 billion, 4.5 billion, and 5.5 billion. So let's get started. In the year 1500, world population was 585 million. That's all the people in the world. So that's somewhere above here, but not too far above this line. Considering you might think 85 million is a lot. Yeah, but here that's another 500 million. From this line to this line, that's another 500 million. So it would be a little bit above it, but not too far. So somewhere like here. Considering that to go from this line to this line is 500 million, and we're only talking about an extra 85. Next up, in 1600, the world population was 660 million. So now we are still close to that, but a little bit higher. So it's going to be somewhere around here, let's say. Then in 1700, it was 710 billion. So again, we're still below the 1 billion line, but we are going up further than before. And then we have in 1800, it's very close to a billion. It's 978 million. So it's very close to a billion. So we're going to make this line, this bar, sorry, come very close to a billion, but not exactly touching it. So right there. See, it's almost at a billion, but not quite. Then in 1900, we have 1,650 million. So now we've passed a billion, and we're more than halfway through to 2 billion. So we've also passed 1.5 billion. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a chart that is actually above this line as well. And now we have, from 1.5 billion, we have an extra 150 million. So that's somewhere close to here. Considering from here to here is 500 million, and we only have 150. That's somewhere about here. We don't really need to be exact right now when we're just learning about charts. So when you hear me say about there, now we could be more precise, but right now we don't have to right now that we're just learning about charts. Next up, we have the year 2000, where the population reached 6 billion. So it's all the way up here in 2000. And in 2020, it's actually 7.8 billion. So you can see how quickly the population rose. The reasons for that are complicated. We're not going to get into that right now. But you can see how, this is where charts are really useful. Because you can see that, it was pretty stable. It was rising really slowly. And then suddenly something happened after 1,800 and it just started jumping. It started to increase very rapidly. So this is where charts can come in handy. Because when you're looking at it like this, just numbers, and imagine if it wasn't even just zeros. I've simplified it here by putting in just zeros. This isn't the actual numbers. It was more precise. But imagine if these numbers were more complex. It would be much harder for you to understand. Whereas this visual representation of these numbers, it's very easy to understand that, oh, the population is rising and it rose really rapidly. Something happened in this time frame in this 200 years that made the population rise. So that's that for bar charts. Next, we're going to be talking about pie charts. And we're going to be doing that nice and quick. Actually, you know what? Just delete everything. No. That's actually not. Yeah. Let's delete all that. Now, pie charts are very good for representing percentages. Okay? So when I want to see what percentage of something do I have or not have, that's where pie charts come in handy. So for example, let's say I want to chart um, my monthly expenditures, okay, to see what percentage of my total income, which should have been 1,000 euros here, I spend on everything. So let's say, not specifically, I mean generally, an example. Okay, so here let's say that someone makes 1,000 euros. Okay, and they pay 400 euros on rent, 300 euros to the supermarket, 100 euros to entertainment, which could be movies, going out with friends, anything like that. 150 euros on their car, which could be maintenance or just the gas. And then they save 50 euros every month. So let's try and chart that. What we're going to do is we're going to make a circle that looks like a pie. That's why it's called a pie chart. Okay? And we're going to find what percentage of my total income is each of these things. Well, 400 out of 2,000, if you do those calculations, that's actually 40%. And I've made the numbers really simple here so that we can do this a little easier. It could be a lot more complicated, but you'll see an example of that later. Next up, 300 euros. Out of 1,000, that's 30%. 100 euros is 10%. 150 euros is 15%. And 50 euros is 5%. Okay, now to make this a little easier, I've made this shape that basically cut our pie into 10 pieces, since most of these are multiples of 10, and then we have a couple that have 5 in them, but that just means we need to cut one of these pieces in half. So we can do this easily. So this is going to help me out. How? I'm going to say, first we're going to start with the rent. So 40%. Well, since it's 40%, and I've cut this pie into 10 equal pieces, that means that it's going to take up 4 out of the 10 pieces. So I'm going to make a line, a couple of lines actually. Now this piece that I just cut is the percentage of the pie that goes to paying rent. Next up we have 30%, so that's 3 pieces. This part is what goes to paying for the supermarket. Next up we have entertainment, so 100 euros, 10%. That's one piece. Next up we have the automobile, and here what we see, I actually made a mistake. Go further back. This should have been drawn here. And this should have been drawn here, which means that this is the piece that goes to paying rent. This is the piece that goes to the supermarket. Then we have this piece for the entertainment, and then we have 15% for the automobiles. So 15%, that means one piece and then half a piece, since that's an extra 5%. And then so here's like half an extra piece. And then 5% goes to savings. Now what I'm going to do is I am going to combine all of these. And the pie. Sorry. Then we're going to remove these gray lines, and I'm going to color it. I'm going to make the rent this color, this orange color, and fill it all in. Then we're going to make the supermarket green. Again, fill it in. And then we're going to make entertainment blue. The automobile red. And then the savings we can make, say, yellow. Now visualizing it like this instead of this can help you understand exactly, in this problem, how much money is going into what. So here you can see, oh, that's a big piece of that pie going into rent. Like, maybe if I want to save more money, I can think about going to a place with smaller rent. It could be something to consider. Or look how big a piece is going to the supermarket. Like, maybe I don't need to buy all the stuff that I buy at the supermarket. Maybe I can buy fewer things if I'm not consuming everything I buy at the supermarket. Maybe I don't need to spend so much money at the supermarket. If I wanted to change things, this would help me visualize that. Another example where pie charts help a lot is in visualizing, again, complex numbers or difficult to understand numbers. So here, for example, we have put into a pie chart the world population per country. So here you can see the percentage of the population that lives in each country. So for example, in China it's 18.5%, with the most. Then in India it's 17.9%. In America it's 4.3%, and so on and so forth. So you can see some interesting things here, like for example that China and India together have almost 1/3 of the entire global population, actually maybe more. So this visualization is how pie charts and generally charts help me. Putting numbers into a form where I can see them basically helps me understand my data a lot more. Whereas if I just gave you these numbers like 0.9 and 1.1 and 1.1 and 2.6, yes, you would understand them, but maybe not as well as when you see it like this. So that'll be all for today. So I'll see you guys again tomorrow. Have a good day. Bye.